Hey, what's up, everybody? You've all been waiting for it and expecting it. And of course, I'm making a 320 Bane guide with the changes. This video will basically just be a diff of what has changed since the previous patch. The TLDR is that Bane is fine. That's what I've been saying over and over again. It's effectively a net neutral in the end. It's going to be basically about exactly the same. We were really, really close to glory until we got the final patch notes. And we saw what the adjustments were after the curse manifesto. In the end, everything is basically fine. It is almost exactly the same. So PoE also is not fully updated yet, and we still got to wait for all of the gems and everything. But I did my best here to show the exact changes. We're going to go over all of them, what's changed, everything here. If you've played Bane in the past and you like this build, this will be a really quick video for you to watch. You can just look at the differences here. There's almost nothing to change here whatsoever. If you already know the build, you're good to go. Or if you've recently discovered that you're Bane curious, then my recommendation would be to watch my previous videos first, most specifically my 318 Sentinel video. Everything will be linked below. That video goes into way more detail. And since this is really just like a quick overview of the differences, which are really, really minor, I don't particularly feel like re-recording the exact same video and saying the exact same stuff that I've been saying for 2 years. The 318 video was very thorough, and that'll be still good to go. After that, then I would come over to this one, look at the very, very minor changes and understand the differences. If anything, that will help you better understand the build in the end regardless. So yeah, without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, so what happened? Why are we even doing this? Why are we calculating the changes? So just from reading the manifesto, things were looking really, really good for this build. And we're gonna show what I was kind of hoping for. So I got really, really excited. If you saw 2 videos ago, you know that I was like really, really looking forward to this. And then they dropped the Q&A the next day. And the very first line said, Bane is getting a less effective curses modifier. So what they did is they reworked curses. Traditionally, in the past, unique monsters would have a 33% less effective curses on them, and then pinnacle bosses would have 66%. That was actually like the main thing that was making this build worse for bossing, because we rely so much on the effectiveness of the curses. And seeing that they are going to be removing that, they are readjusting like the scaling of the hexes and how strong they are. But with all that considered, that removal of the 66% less modifier is gigantic. At lower investment, double damage for the Bane build. And I was very, very excited for it. And then the next day, they dropped the Q&A, and it said, yeah, Bane's getting a less effective curse modifiers on it as well, similar to Blasphemy and Hex Touch. I've talked about this quite a bit on stream. Basically, I wrote it right here as one of the cons. The knowledge that Bane will never be allowed to be particularly strong by GGG because it has a mechanical utility exploit that they consider too powerful to allow it to shine on its own. So what I mean by that is Bane will apply all of the hexes that it's linked to. So what other builds can do, not this build, is they can just 4-link it in their boots or their gloves or their helmet, and it can be a very, very cheap way to, with very little investment, just apply 3 very powerful curses on a monster. They're just going to do that with Occultist brand. I just want to say that. Like they can apply that, they can do that with Occultist brand. So anyway, because it's so easy to do that with Bane, and it's just, it's one button press, that GGG considers that, they balance things around. Like if it's harder to do mechanically, then they will reward you more. You look at Detonate Dead or War Cries for slams, stuff like that. If you are willing to wait a little bit and press multiple buttons, then they will reward you with more damage, more defense, whatever. I believe that they looked at Bane, and when they were doing the Hex rework, they were like, oh, we're going to be finding most builds are just going to be applying multiple hexes with Bane. And they looked at that one socket cost as not enough to, to be able to do that at full strength. You can still do it with Occultist brand though. And that's probably what people are going to do, or they're going to press multiple buttons. But regardless, this is something that like myself, I personally kind of disagree with, because it costs a gem socket and it's still an additional button press. But regardless, what they did is they added a 25% less effective curse multiplier on Bane, so the curses are not as strong for using Bane. I have seen people in the YouTube comments saying something along the lines of like, oh, they should just add a less effect per linked curse, but like that defeats the whole point of Bane. Like I want to curse with 3 curses, right? Like that's the idea with the build, right? So in the end, when we look at the numbers, you'll see it's fine, but it's not as exciting as I wanted it to be. So anyway, hexes overall will be significantly stronger against bosses, even with the 25% less effect on Bane, whereas previously, right, it was 66%. Because of that, mapping is worse, right? Because curses did get kind of nerfed and rebalanced across the board. particularly Despair and Punishment, 2 curses that we use. So we do lose some damage while mapping, but as we all know, that doesn't really matter. However, Temp Chains and Enfeeble got significantly buffed against bosses because bosses, used to have 66% less, and now they just don't. And now Temp Chains and Enfeeble will be significantly stronger. And so that will be like a nice little defensive layer for fighting bosses. You can use Enfeeble instead of Punishment, something like that, if you want like a more defensively oriented build. So there's a free 30% area of effect that was added to the tree in the Whispers of Doom nodes. This is actually really, really nice. This was a pleasant surprise. There's an option for the Steeped in Profane, which is a new curse cluster for reduced curse effect on you, well increased curse effect. This is what they did when they moved Malediction off the tree, which we'll go over in a second. Profane Bloom went from 40% to 50% chance to explode, which honestly isn't going to be like huge. If you've looked at this build in the past, we could use Herald of Ash with Despair on hit rings, and we would just blow up the whole screen anyway, but this will just be nice. And there are some neat new curse masteries, which are pretty good. And then the summary, we'll go over the numbers in just a second. The summary is that we are roughly 20% more damage overall on bosses and about 20% less while we're mapping. But again, like the mapping DPS really doesn't matter. The real big con here is that they removed Malediction itself from the Occultist tree. There's also some confusion because people only read what they want to read. There was a long kind of run-on sentence by GGG in the manifesto, and people only really remembered the second half of it. Malediction, which previously on the node of the tree would make cursed enemies deal 10% less damage and take 10% increased damage, and that has just gone entirely. The curse effect from that is what got moved to the tree, and that's in the Steeped in Profane cluster right here. The other con here is less damage while mapping. And that's really it. So, this has never been like an A tier or even like B tier racing or going to bosses really, really quick type of build. This is a build for 1 to 300 chaos. You can easily get to T14 to T16 maps, get a couple hundred more chaos in there, get to about 5 to 7 divines, and then you're doing regular pinnacle bosses. Ubers, this is not an Uber build. You want to put a ton of money into it. It can do Ubers, but that's just not the purpose of it. This is just a comfortable league starter. Particularly, I think this might be really good for 320, the Forbidden Sanctum mechanic, because the Forbidden Sanctum, if you can slow down the monsters, dodge things. If you watch the announcement, getting hit at all, even if you have evasion or anything, you will still take a hit to your resolve meter, which is what stops the encounter. So being able to slow the monsters with the really strong temp chains is really, really nice. So yeah, this is a summary. If you've played it anytime in the past, this is really all that has changed. The passive tree is exactly the same. There's some variations that we can do. There's some different gear options that you can do, but there's really nothing new under the sun for this build besides that. So this is the overview, and then we're going to go over the numbers now so you can see how I calculated this and figured it all out. And if you don't want to see the numbers, thanks for watching. Just watch the 318 video, come back to this one, look at the tiny little differences, and you're good to go. The POB is not updated. There is PoEplanner.com right here, which does have the updated tree. This will be linked below if you want to see an example of the updated tree. Literally the only difference is you can see the Whispers of Doom tree right here is updated a little bit. We lose 1 passive point because now it takes 4 travel instead of 3 travel because we want to go through here and take this double 15% increased area of effect, which will be really, really nice. This will help you clear a lot better with Bane. So there you go. All right, so let's just start from what I used as a base for comparison. This is my previous tree, which I have at week 2 moderate budget, which is roughly about 5 divines of investment. Everything's variable based on market prices and everything, but it's all just like 2020 or corrupted 2120 gems. No awakened gems or anything like that. The gear is nothing crazy. It's an unenchanted helmet, Cane of Unraveling, Skin of the Lords, Itziri Steps, and then just like decent gear like this, like a +1 Chaos Skill Gems amulet with a little life on it, stuff like that, regular little Iolite ring. Nothing crazy here whatsoever, just like a baseline investment. This character is also level 93, and you can see that we have a combined full DPS. This is Essence Drain, Blight, and Bane all together. We have that at 3.5 million combined full DPS. This is the enemy with low life and 15 Wither stacks, and you can see we have it set to a Guardian/Pinnacle boss. This is just a set baseline for apples to apples numbers. This is a comfortable build at this level investment for doing, 3.5 million dot DPS for fighting Cirrus, Maven, any T16 map. Is really, really comfortable. And yeah, I'm perfectly happy playing the build like this. And let's look at the differences and how I tried to adjust it. So we know that Guardian and Pinnacle bosses are losing that 66% less curse effect multiplier. And I actually just added in 200% increased effect of curses. So that's going from 33% effective curses, times 3 effectively to get to about 100% right there. Also, due to the loss of Malediction, what I did is I turned off Malediction right here. I kept this little travel point. I turned this off. I just typed in, you can apply an additional curse right here. And then Bane has 25% less effective curses right there. And you'll see what happens to the damage in a second if we comment that out. And then the other stuff that I did is you'll notice that I have it only set to 11 Wither stacks. That's to account for the nerf to Despair, which loses its increased damage taken from damage over time. You know, these are all as rough numbers as we can get here. I'm trying to get like the numbers as close as I can get. The other thing that I did here is I set punishment to level 10. Punishment is going from like 70% to 59%, I think. And so if we go to level 10 punishment, that's about the same as level 20 punishment right now. And then I also switched Despair to Anomalous here because that's actually going to be the new default quality on Despair, I believe. So that's the changes that I made there to try to get it as close as possible to get like an apples to apples comparison. And then if you look, you'll see 3.9. You see the previous one was 3.5. And we're going to 3.9 million combined DPS. So that's about 20% more DPS overall for fighting Guardian Pinnacle bosses, which is really nice. Just to clarify really quickly here, I was looking at the wrong numbers as I was recording this, but at lower investment, it was roughly 50 to 75% more damage. And then that kind of has diminishing returns at higher investment. And it averaged to between 10 to 20%, really based on the investment and the gear. So I kind of was just averaging to 20%. I know that's not what it looks like in these two POBs. The downside here, like I said before, is losing Malediction, the 10% reduced damage done by monsters. This is already not the tankiest build in the world. Its defensive layer is primarily, you got a strong temp chains, you casting at distance. That's how you stay alive. I actually played it in Hardcore Solo Self, found this patch in Lake of Calandra, and it was totally fine, but you just want to go for a wand and shield variation. And then, if you want to know why I was super excited and why now I'm just saying Bane is fine, it is better. You know, 20% more damage is great. And there's plenty of things that you can do if you want to like play around with the variations. Like I said, I want to encourage you guys to play around with this as well. There is the Steeped in Profane right here. This is pretty decent. There is a new cluster right here with Malicious Intent. I tested it in PoB, the +2 level of all cursed skill gems. It's just like 10% more damage. And same thing here, if we take Steeped in Profane, 10% more damage. Is 10% more damage worth 4 passive points? And like up here, this is like way more passive points. This is 6 passive points, actually 7 because we would want this one. 7 for 10% more damage, right? Like it's just not really worth to take these in my opinion. But there could be variations of routing here where you would want to just go straight up and, you know, maybe you could take that. Reduced curse effect on you is really nice as a defensive layer. If you are playing hardcore, I probably would recommend grabbing Steeped in Profane. Enemies cursing you is one of the biggest sneaky killers to get you. And then, yeah, the grand reveal. So look at that 3.9 million DPS number. Remember, this is medium investment. This is like maybe 5 divines. And see this 25% less effective curses? Watch me comment it out. Yeah. If we didn't have that 25% less effect curse multiplier, Bane would be getting 54.5% more damage. The build as a whole, that would elevate it from comfy build that's like kind of nice at low investment, feels good to play, to damn, that's a pretty good build. I was really, really excited. I love this build. It's comfy. It's great. It's a great beginner build specifically. If you're introducing someone to the game, they like a caster archetype, they like a curse archetype, the build will do everything that a beginner needs it to do. But if it were doing this amount of damage, that would make it compelling. At higher investment, it was doing about 15 million combined DPS. And then we were playing around on stream a couple days ago, and I went full glass cannon, and I got it to like 30 million DPS without that 25% less effect multiplier. Unfortunately, this is pretty harsh. You know, in the end, right? 20% more damage, the build is fine. The build is more fine. It doesn't elevate it to like, this is a kick-ass build. That's what I was hoping for. I was a little sad. You might have seen me, I got a little upset on Twitter, but I did regret that. So yeah, there we go. Hopefully there's enough information in here for you at least to understand that the build is even better. It'll be nice to play. I'm not sure if I'm going to play it this league. I've literally played it probably 6 or 7 times at this point. You know, I like variety myself as well, but it is a great build, particularly for beginners or if you just like the archetype in general. And especially since you are a witch and an occultist, it can transition to some of those real awesome, juicy big boy builds a little bit later on. So yeah, I'm going to put as much information as I can in the description below. If there's anything missing, please don't hesitate to join the Discord. We have a great community of people that have played this build quite a bit, and you can pop onto the Twitch stream and I'll try to answer all the questions that I can. But yeah, thanks for watching. Let's look forward to a great 3.20. Fingers crossed that it is really, really good and significantly better than 3.19. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Goodbye.